Who is Swupnil and why do we care?
Yeah, so I'm Swupnil. I'm co-founder and CEO of swing.vision, which is a company that's bringing automated stats, highlights, and now line calling to all tennis players using just your iPhone. So sounds like voodoo magic, but it actually works. And to give you a bit more background on myself, so prior to swing.vision, I was working at Tesla and their autonomous driving team. So I have a lot of experience in using cameras to track moving objects like cars and pedestrians. And that's really where the idea for Swing Vision first came about. I've also been a lifelong tennis player, so that's been my main sport. I grew up playing with my brother and my dad, and we watched a lot of tennis growing up. I'm a huge tennis fan, so I've been to like all the Grand Slams in person. I'm just big fan of the sport, and always wanted a way to just track my game. That was really the fundamental question. I was like, what's my first serve percentage? Like, how often am I converting break points? Like, I have no idea about these basic stats that everybody seems to know for pros on TV. And so that was the initial kind of reason why we created Swing Vision. But over time, it's evolved and it's just grown to do so much more than just tracking your stats. But that's just like a, I guess, brief recap of myself and what I do. And I think what Swing Vision's doing is really changing the sport, the way it's being played. And this is so timely coming on here to talk with you guys because we just came up of our first USTA event ever. It's probably the first amateur event ever that was officiated using electronic line calling, and it was officiated using Swing
Awesome.
Vision.
Nice.
So it's pretty, yeah, it's very good timing. And this year is going to be a big year for us for sure.
Nice. So that brings me in the beginning to kind of my first two questions, and it's kind of difficult to ask them both at the same time, but I'm curious as to your playing career. Did you play in college? Were you a high level player? Where'd you go with your playing career? I'll start there.
Yeah, so I
Curiosity.
played in high school, and then I went to Berkeley for my undergrad. So I tried to make the club team, but the club team at Berkeley is basically like a D3 team. So
Hmm.
it was pretty tough. Did not make the team, lost like first or second round every time I tried out. So I played intramural for the most part, and my focus was primarily just like academics for the most part of my life. And I was so academic that after that I went to Columbia to get my PhD in statistics. So I was trying to become a professor actually. But I
Ah,
still tried to play a lot of tennis. Even when I was out there, I played intramural, played on some of the green clay courts out there in New York, which is super fun. And then kind of after I finished my PhD, came back to California to work at Tesla. Then I was playing in USTA leagues. So, I typically play in like 4-0 leagues. But these days, it's because now I've moved to LA. I kind of commute back and forth between SoCal and NorCal because most of our team is based in NorCal. So it's a lot harder for me now to do like USTA leagues, but I mostly just play with our team. So we have like team tennis after work. So that's been super fun. And so we play a lot and we use the app a lot, obviously. So it's been pretty good.
got it. And got it from Berkeley to Tesla. That makes sense. So that's my next obvious question. You say it seems like magic. We had somebody ask that the other day. Say, okay, well, we've got this statistics thing that we can do. All right, cool. And then Bobby looks up and says, wait, you have to do it yourself? Like, wait a minute, doesn't Swing Vision just magically do it? And I guess if you can make sure a car doesn't bump into other things, you probably should be able to figure out a tennis ball. And am I
Yeah.
simplifying that, of course?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's accurate, right? Like, I think tracking cars is pretty hard, especially because the car itself is moving. And so, that makes it even more challenging. But what's been interesting is like tennis is more challenging in some other ways. So, the nice thing for us is your iPhone is just sitting there at the back of the court. It's not moving itself, which is nice. But the ball is very small and the ball is moving very fast relative to the camera. So it's like the challenges are kind of different with like autonomous driving. Generally, the other cars are moving like not that fast relative to you. Like if you're on the highway, you're all going like 60 to 70 miles per hour. It's very rare that something's moving at you like 60 miles per hour. But in tennis, you have a ball that's coming at the camera at like 100 miles per hour plus sometimes, right? So that's challenging. And then obviously we're trying to put all this data crunching into an iPhone that only has, whatever battery life it has. It's not a big car with a gigantic computer. So there's always other constraints. So it's like very interesting. Like it's more challenging in some ways. Obviously, it's much easier in some ways. But yeah, it's been a really fun problem to work on, and a lot of the work I did at Tesla did translate over. Obviously, it's like a completely different domain, but a lot of the same sort of principles I think at least give us a head start, and I think give us some advantage over potentially other people trying to solve it. Um, but yeah, it's been a really fun journey, and we've been on the App Store about 4.5 years now. So finally, now we're getting to the point where the accuracy is so good that it can actually call lines, which is again, it feels even more like sci-fi and hard to believe.
That's the real, from our opinion, and Bobby, I'm going to speak for both of us because we've had this conversation enough, that the line calling is going to, we think, change the world. It's one thing for me to know that I've got a, 38% first serve percentage and I got to work on it. It's another thing for me and you to go play a tennis match, whether we like each other, know each other, none of it matters anymore. We can simply agree we're going to go with this system, and we can settle disputes. And I think that's just going to change things. I know Bobby talks to people about it all the time. Bobby, is that am I with us on that? We both agree that that's going to be just as big, if not bigger, than the stats and the highlights.
Oh, I mean, obviously, I think it's gonna. Hopefully, it'll make it a kinder, gentler place. Just to take
Right.
that element out of it. That everybody's so preoccupied by line calls. I always try to temper and say that I don't think anybody maliciously does it. Just as you get older, and if you're not familiar with spin, there are a lot of variables. So take that out of it. Agree upon that we're going to let somebody else handle that, and let's just enjoy ourselves and spend more time hitting the ball. Hopefully, it'll make it a much more pleasant experience, especially on the junior level.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that was, so this past weekend we were at the Maze Cup, which is an event where kind of the best NorCal players play against the best SoCal players. It was a tough event for me because I wasn't sure who to root for because I'm like NorCal at heart, but now I live in SoCal. But it was just amazing that all the parents felt like that was the first thing, which is exactly what you said, Bobby, which is that like there was so much fewer arguments. People were just calling a lot more honestly. And even the challenge system, like they didn't need to use it that much because people were just being a lot more honest. And if they did need to use it, it was just more because it was a very close call, and they're like, well, we might as well challenge it because it's kind of tough to
Yeah.
even know whether it was in or out. So it was just like honest calls, honestly, that were being challenged. And it was funny at one point we were talking with the USDA SoCal kind of senior director of competitions. Her name's Maria, and she's like, "Do you hear that?" And I was like, "What?" She's like, "You don't hear any arguments. Like it's silent." So it was funny, and like that was like the big change, and all the parents kind of echoed that same feedback, and it was just an instant behavior change, just the presence of the system. But then it was just so fun to see like that, the players would go up. We had like an iPad on every court essentially at the net post. So players would just go up and like they'd hit a challenge button. It would show them an objective decision, whether it's in or out, and they just kind of went on with the match, and that was it. Like, it was just so like frictionless and smooth, and it's like this is how tennis should be played everywhere. And you kind of got a peek into the future of like how this sport should have been played this whole time and how the pros already play it. So that was really fascinating.
Yeah, agreed. And I've got a quick little in the weeds technical question. How did you do that? You got a camera up on every court, but then you got a way to challenge. I assume you didn't put the watches on. You said there's a little area where the kids can go and do a challenge. What did that look like in this scenario?
Yeah, so I guess for some additional context for people who aren't familiar with Swing Vision, today if you download the app on your phone, you can put your phone up. Actually, I have this swing stick here, so this is the best way to mount your phone. You just
I
attach your
just
phone
opened
onto some.
mine at home. I love it, by the way. I can't wait. I got a whole unboxing video I'm gonna do.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, it's so great. And it's like now it's just becoming part of like everybody's tennis bag. Like it's like you have to have a swing stick. Like so
Bobby looked at me at one point.
um
He's like, "Are we really going to pay $100 for a stick?" And I said, "Yes. Like, you got to see this thing. It is. Yes, you are."
and yeah, and then you just attach it on the fence and you have your phone up there. And so as an individual player, if you want to challenge line calls, the easiest way to do that is if you have an Apple Watch. So if you have an Apple Watch paired to your phone, you can just go and hit the challenge button. It'll actually show you a slow motion replay. It'll give you a decision. It'll actually say in or out. Um, And so that's how it works today for individuals. But for tournaments, it's a little bit more complicated. You don't necessarily want to have like a watch in everybody's hand. And like, it's also complicated to get the watch to pair with the phone and all that. So what we said was we're going to remove the watch from the equation. And so what we did is we have an iPhone on every court at the top of the fence that's recording. And then we have an iPad on every court at the net post that the players can go up to and challenge. So they don't even have to leave the court or anything. It's just right there on the court. They can self-administer the challenge on their own. Each player gets 3 challenges per set, very similar to how the ATP used to do it before
Nice.
Hawkeye Live. And it just all it needs is really like a Wi-Fi connection on the courts. And like the facility where we did this, the Jack Kramer Club, the Wi-Fi was definitely struggling a bit because there were so many people there for the event, but it was totally fine. Like it still loaded really quickly. And so essentially the phone is recording the match. It's processing everything in real time. Like as soon as the ball bounces, the phone already knows within like half a second whether it was in or out. So it's like getting those results instantly. And then from that iPad, anytime you want, you can just check the results and it'll just kind of talk to the phone and say, hey, give me the latest challenge. And then we just show it on the screen. And so that's kind of how it worked for the players. And what was also really fun was that um, I and my co-founder, we had iPads, and those iPads would let us challenge on any court remotely, which was really fun. So I would just be like walking around and I would just show it to like the parents, like, hey, that was a close call, let's just check it out. So just for fun, I was just challenging, and you could do that. And I showed that to the roaming officials at the event, and they wanted that. They were like, when can I get an iPad? Like, I want it, I want that feature. So it was cool to see. But yeah, it was all just using like Wi-Fi and just standard devices that you can buy at the Apple Store, nothing fancy.
That is
Yeah,
fantastic. To Bobby's point about most people not doing it intentionally,
yeah,
my theory has always been I'm going to call more shots in to your
yeah,
advantage than
for
I'm
sure.
going to either accidentally or even intentionally get wrong calling them out. That would be in my opinion, a fascinating statistic. Can you spit that out already that says, here's how many shots? Well, I guess you won't know if it was called in or out,
I mean, technically we do because like you played the point, right? So,
right?
but we do see that.
Like
Honestly, we see
missed
it all the
calls.
time. Yeah. Yeah, we do see that all the time. I mean, especially serves, like when people are hitting really fast serves.
Mhm.
And I saw it at the event. I saw so many shots. I was like, ooh, they probably should have challenged that because it was actually
Mhm.
out. But it's like, you're not gonna challenge every single serve. Like it's kind of ridiculous. But it's just hard. And that's somewhere where our long-term vision for this is to make it like Hawkeye Live, and where it would call it immediately. And so then you wouldn't have that issue of like playing a serve that was like clearly out, because you sort of had the reverse issue where it's like, I don't really want to challenge the serve. Like, I don't want to slow down the game. I actually had a pretty good return, so like, why would I even want to challenge it, right? So it just puts you in an awkward position. So I think that's the long term, which is like instant calls and there is no challenge. It's like every shot is challenged. So that's our vision, and we'll probably get there in a couple of years. But one step at a time.
One step at a time. Bobby, that makes me think of something you say all the time. I'm like, oh, I think we can get that done. How about next week? And Bobby's reminding me, Swupnil, all the time. He's like, yeah, maybe that's a next year thing, Shaun, because you got some really cool ideas and some things we want to think about, but not every, like magic doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah,
And it's a lot of work. And you said, Swupnil, you've been doing this almost 5 years now?
yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Coming
and
up on 5 years next month. Yeah,
that's a lot, and that's a long time, and that's a lot of work. That's a lot of investment.
yeah,
I mean, you're talking about investing and then trying to figure out, okay, now we've got to sell it. We got to make some money. We're running a business.
yeah.
But did you actually ever think you'd be saving the world from angry junior tennis players? Like this is we want this here from a social point of view, because
Right.
like Bobby said, you're just making the world a happier place. I don't think that was in your mission statement when you started, right?
No, it wasn't. I mean, I think like our mission's always been that we want to bring the pro experience to the players, but I don't think line calling was really part of it initially. Like I think even if I look back to the first pitch I did to like Andy Roddick, like that wasn't actually part of it at all. It was just like, hey, we're gonna bring this really cool professional quality data to your game. And it was all about the stats actually. And then what happened was we released the product, because you need video to get the stats. We said, let's also show you video highlights of your game and remove the dead time. And then that actually quickly became the most popular feature. And so it was actually the highlights that became the most popular thing. And then just kind of naturally, as the AI got more accurate, as our algorithms got better, at a certain point, we like surpassed human accuracy for the line calls. And then we're like, oh, shoot, like actually, we could solve the biggest problem in the sport, which is line calling. So it was something that kind of happened later. It wasn't necessarily something we were trying to do from the get-go, because frankly, I didn't think it would necessarily be possible. Even myself, I was just a little bit, conservative about it. I was like, it'd be cool if we could solve line calling, but I don't think that's really that realistic right now. So I am amazed that we were able to do it with just one phone. But the hardware has gotten so good, our AI has gotten really good. Our team has just innovated a lot there, and so it's finally here. It's pretty crazy to think about.
And that's the biggest difference because you've got one camera. Well, a
Yeah,
phone with maybe multiple cameras, but one
yeah,
one
one
location
viewpoint.
of a camera.
Yeah.
Where on tour they've got, I don't, what did I hear at one point? 30 cameras or something crazy?
Yeah, well, I think Hawkeye is probably like 10 cameras,
10.
but pretty much every other solution out there, and I won't try to drop any names to give them free advertising, but
Right.
if you can do a Google search and see there's competitors, but they all require at least two cameras pretty much. So Swing Vision is the only system that requires just one, and we actually got a patent granted for that in February. Took many years to get to that,
Congratulations.
but we got that granted, and it's basically our single camera solution for tracking objects in 3D. It actually applies to any sport, but obviously we're focused on tennis right now. And so yeah, so it's the one of a kind, I guess, pun unintended, and like there haven't really been any other solutions yet. And so I think that always will make us the most affordable solution and the most scalable one. And I mean, another funny story actually about that was there was a match on this weekend where we had to move from court 5 to court 3 because of somebody else had court 5 for some reason. I guess a scheduling issue, and so we had to like take the phone off and put it on a different court, and it took like 30 seconds. And the
Nice.
SoCal team was so surprised. They were like, "I love how we had to make a last minute change to the player like scheduling and court assignment, and like we didn't need a screwdriver to do that." Like they were just so blown away like how easy it was to just move to a different court. So I think that just speaks to like how scalable this is going to be. And I think, as long as we just train, the officials and the staff members of the USTA, then you could imagine this just scaling out to every federation in the world eventually. So that's like, it's kind of just like the path is there now, and we just have to execute on it.
Oh, there's the fun part. Now we actually have to go do it, right?
Yeah.
Because then where Bobby jumps in, he starts asking all the questions like, okay, well, wait a minute. How do we actually get it done? So Bobby, I know you've probably got 1,000 questions.
Well, I've been triggered numerous times. I've heard Tesla, Apple. I'm like, all right, shareholder, tell me more. So I'm loving this from an Apple perspective. I see a lot of product going off the shelves. I want to learn more whether or not I'm ever going to get autonomous driving out of Elon. So we'll have to do that off the air. Considering you, like everybody else, seems to be leaving him right now. But Shaun, when did we talk the first time? When did we speak with Swing Vision first?
It was about 2 years ago.
2 years. So that immediately I was going to jump in. Just the fact that the line calling was now actually part of Swing Vision, where when we spoke the first time, it was, yes, something we're doing. Yes, it's 90% accurate. Yes, even at 90%, it's more accurate, but we don't use it, because it's not where we want it to be. So when you said that immediately, I was like, well, there's a huge change, just the way it's being presented right away, which is fantastic. Second, now at the tournament, I know one of the things is always that at our level, people would have to agree on whether the camera would be in play. Did the tournament say this is the way we're doing it? You have no choice?
Yeah, exactly. So they said that, if you don't want to use the system, like don't come and play, basically. They didn't say it like that, but that was essentially like the philosophy. And so so we have a partnership with SoCal for at least 8 events this year. Our next one's in June. It's the junior sectional, so that's gonna be a really big one. We're gonna have 16 courts there. And it's the same kind of thing. So it's like this is the system we're gonna use. The decision that happens is the final result. So like you can't even ask like a roaming umpire like, hey, what do you think? Like let's override the system. Like you're not allowed to do that because you just don't want to slow down the game. Then it's like defeats the purpose, right? So SoCal was very like adamant about that. Like this needs to be the final decision. Even if it might make a mistake once in a while, like we need to be consistent about it at least, because then otherwise you get into like a slippery slope and it's like, okay, well then someone in the fans, saw it out, or the parents saw it out, or whatever. Like it's just, so you want to avoid that. And so, yeah, I think they did a really great job with that communication, and I think the players just had to accept it. And there was like maybe 1 or 2 calls where they were like, I don't know if that was really right, but it's like ultimately it is objective at least, and it's not going to bias towards any one player or another. And so I think for the most part, players felt very comfortable and confident with that approach.
And I know I just handed it back to Bobby, but Swupnil, just in the back end, I just sent you a contract for 8 events here in Atlanta. So let's take a look at that when we're done here. But go ahead,
Let's
Bobby.
do it.
Sorry.
No, that's a good point, because what I'm hearing in all of that is, okay, what facility actually has the Wi-Fi capability
That too,
to do
yes.
this? So that's what I heard. I was like, this is a problem at Windermere because our Wi-Fi is horrendous. So, but that might be the impetus to do better. If I could sit there, you're going to get better line calls. I think that would be a great way to swing the tennis committee into improving our technology a little bit. So, yeah, that is of interest. And so, when's your next one? When is the next? Are we gonna? And how old were the kids that did this tournament? I'm sorry.
Yeah, they were like mostly high school age, I would say. A few of them were like seniors about to go in the fall, and they were gonna go play D1 somewhere. So,
So they're hitting
um,
it big.
yeah, they're
Yeah,
hitting
this
big. I
isn't
mean,
it. Yeah,
some of those serves I've never hit a serve that fast before. I
right.
never
Yeah,
will.
this isn't a
You know,
12-year-old ball flying. This is
yeah.
a full-grown person hitting a serve. So we're getting it at a high level. So that's great right away. Have we done anything? Have spoken to Lake Nona? Anything coming to Florida or?
We are speaking with Lake Nona. It's a little bit different with them because I think like they would probably prefer like more of a permanent solution where it's like always there, right? And so we haven't really built that. We are thinking about building something that's more permanent, but I think that's at least today the beauty of Swing Vision is that it's not permanent, right? But I think there is a world where that is helpful to have, especially at a facility where you have a lot of members. Like you don't want everybody to keep putting their swing stick up and taking it down, and the next person comes on the court and puts it up again. It's like, let's just cut that out. And so I think like there's an opportunity for that. If and when we do build a permanent solution, I think Lake Nona would be super interested, because I know they have another solution which they haven't been totally happy with. So I think there's an opportunity for us there. But yeah, and then in terms of the next event, it's the junior sectionals in SoCal, which is we're going to be out there the June 8th weekend and then the following weekend as well. So we're going to be there 2 weekends in a row because it's such a big event. And it's like singles, doubles, you're going to have like 14, 16s, 18s, like all different age groups, probably even 12s, honestly. So, it's just the whole gamut, which has been really nice to see that we're able to help everybody kind of improve the experience.
So I don't want to, and I just don't want to, because I'm gonna put my coach hat on now, and because you keep saying, and I want to agree with you, but I do disagree to a point that I think analytics are terribly underused in tennis.
Mm.
I think from a sports standpoint, tennis is behind in the use of analytics. So I love, as a coach, anything that is going to ease the introduction into analytics. I mean, I can say it till I'm 10,000 times blue in the face. I'm looking forward to saying here, this isn't me speaking. This is the computer telling you what I've been telling you. So, I think just the ease of getting analytics in people's hands is going to tremendously help the game, help coaches. I mean, again, just making your life easier. Okay, now we know there's a problem. There's no longer a debate about the problem. It's here. We have empirical data. There's an issue. What are we going to do to correct it? So that is equally as exciting from the coaching perspective.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's resonated a lot with coaches, and I think that's probably an opportunity for improvement for us, which is like we kind of show almost too much data, which I think sometimes can be overwhelming for players. But I think coaches love it. They love digging into all the stats and the heat maps and all the cool features that we have there. So I think it's kind of trying to find a way to bridge it a little bit and summarize it in a way so that players can understand it, but then still provide the depth for a coach who really wants to get like deep in the weeds, and the coach can be the one to kind of summarize it and communicate the feedback. So yeah, it's really exciting. And we have a lot of stuff that's going to be built this year for coaches. So yeah, it's been a market that we've been wanting to address more, but we've just had our hands full with the players. So that's been the primary focus of the product.
Mhm.
But now we're shifting to events, and then kind of second half of the year, big focus will be coaches for the first time for us. So lots of new things coming there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's awesome. Where they can see it. Visualization is such a big thing. I can tell them I can walk on the court. If they can see themselves, look, if you would have followed the ball and moved 2 feet to your right, that's an easy volley as opposed to a volley you're reaching for. Again, I think it's just going to clue in. And the great part about the evolution of technology, everybody's in that place now. It's not a reach anymore. We always have our phone in our hands. We're always looking for answers on our phone. Okay, let's look. So I could help Lake Nona out, put an iPhone on the court, and they'll be fine. This way, they don't have to worry about it. You put a little box around it, protect it from the sun, and you're covered. So
Yeah.
we can get around these things. But yeah, I think from the coaching standpoint, fantastic. Looking forward to that as well. So Shaun, how do we get it here? I mean, we got some events coming.
I just kind of paused. I'm like, all right, so but I can go like 9 different ways. I'm just gonna pick
Yeah.
one, which is
How do we?
I'm looking down, I'm saying, okay, so my next big question there is, from a social point of view, how are we convincing Atlanta from our
Mm.
audience, you're going to do well, Swupnil, in the high level players, the tournaments, the statistics, the coaches. But really, where we would love to see it also is a lot of our audience, which is that social player. It is that 3.0, 3.5, 4.0 player that goes out. And maybe that was one of your initial targets as well. It seems like it was just the guy who had an iPhone and an Apple Watch who didn't want to argue about line calls during his tennis match. Just going out to be able to do that thing. I'll skip to one. The only thing really that I was pushing for a couple of years ago is, where are you guys with streaming at this point, can I plug it in? Let's say we magically have great Wi-Fi all the time, right? Where are we that says, okay, I can now then stream it? Let's say my wife's at home and she wants to watch, but she's not there. Is it possible to hit that live feed button as well? Because I'm wondering if that brings a bit of the social nature to it beyond just all the cool statistics and highlights that you can already do.
Yeah, definitely. We do have a streaming product actually now in the platform, and it's primarily for colleges because the costs for us have been a little bit high. I think we still need to get the cost down to make it like a wider consumer product. But we do have several colleges that use Swing Vision for streaming, and so we have about 100 teams that use Swing Vision in general for analytics and video analysis, but we have a small handful that are now using it for streaming. And it's all just within the same app, and it's just like another setting. And as you said, as long as you have good Wi-Fi, then it will work. And it'll even show you like the score on the stream if you're keeping score with another device. So yeah, we haven't opened it up to consumers yet, but I mean, it'd be great to chat with you more about that. I mean, I think there's been some clubs that have been interested in that as well. So yeah, I mean, that is our long-term vision, which is again, it's like the mission of the company is to bring the professional experience, right? So if you think about 10 years from now, if you're playing tennis, like you should expect that it will be streamed. People who are watching it will look like a broadcast quality match to them. The production will look so good. You might even have different camera angles and slow motion replays. Even with just one camera, we might be able to synthetically create that with like generative AI. You might be able to have like John McEnroe's commentary on your match. I mean, you can just imagine the limits of like of where this is gonna go, right? Like, so I think like that's really the vision for us is like, let's try to bring everything that you see in the professional experience and bring that to everybody who's an amateur. And so I do think the streaming and all this is going to become the norm, but I think we're still a bit away on the cost side to just making that more efficient. But once we can get that a lot lower cost, then I think it becomes very exciting, and I think a lot more players will want to stream their matches. But yeah, then I think going to your other question about the social players, like I'd say if you look at our customer base, it's almost like two categories, and it's pretty much what you said. So you have like the 4.5 to 5.0 plus type of player who's like really using it for like video analysis. They're watching back their technique. They're looking at like the shots they missed and trying to understand like what to improve. And then you have the social players who don't really look at the stats at all, other than maybe like speed, because everybody loves looking at their speed of their shots. But they're really just using it for highlights. And so they'll like bookmark their favorite rallies. They'll share it with their friends over like text message or post it on Instagram. We have a lot of people who post like highlights on Instagram. And if you go to our Instagram page, you'll see like it's just all users around the world sharing their highlights. So I think that's become a very fun part about the social component. And I think that's where most social players would get the most value. It's less so about the data, and it's just more like a way to rewatch and relive those memories that you had on the court, and you can share it with people who maybe weren't able to come to the court, friends and family. You just kick back and like watch it on the TV. Like I do that all the time. I'll play a match, and then there are some fun points. If I go see my parents on another weekend, I'll just show them like we'll just watch it on the TV with AirPlay, and so things like that. It's just like a fun way to relive the moments, I think, which is also pretty good value.
Yeah, and I can only imagine how many parents, grandparents, you bring the
Yeah.
kids and you say, hey, you know what? Yeah, I didn't get to go see the tournament, but we've got the whole tournament here in 5 minutes
Yeah.
and all the fun. And here's some of our favorite things. I mean, I can only imagine wanting to watch my own grandkids playing tournament. Like we didn't have that when we were playing tournaments as kids. I mean, if somebody showed up with the big camera on their shoulder to try to video somebody's match. I think you also weren't allowed to do that. But it was such a difficult thing to accomplish then. And now not only are you capable of giving me this stick, which I'm very happy with, by the way. You hang it up there, it's done, it's ready to go, and then it magically does it all. And that's what's interesting to me, because there are other products out there that I got to hit in, out, like I got to press it in manually and do all the math, and that gives me maybe deeper statistics because there's more, because I'm putting in more information, but I get off the court and it's done. It's just fantastic. And I think besides saving the planet from bad line calls and fights, I think it's also the idea that we're getting together, as Bobby said, and we're just a happier place. I mean, Bobby and I talk about we want to do a shot of the week and some fun things with Go Tennis. There's more social tennis going on here in Atlanta than any single place in the world. And we should be able to share that, and we should be, I hit the great shot and all excited. But then I still go back to Bobby's coaching hat, who says, yeah, but I'm still going to walk up to that player and say, hey, by the way, I was right. You're at 13% and that's too low. And to actually have it there, I'm sure, Bobby, that's where you're using it as much as you can.
But I think they're going to improve so much more too, because, you know, as we always say, the bad part about starting later in life, you just don't get the reps. You don't get the visualization. You're myopic. You're watching the ball travel. You're not seeing everything that's going on behind you. If you're spending time because for whatever reason, it's just cool, and I want to watch a good highlight, that's getting you more exposure unknowingly, unwillingly, unwittingly. You're just getting immersed in it. So I think it's just going to help and improve everybody's level of play just because you're getting more theoretical reps.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's a good point. I think the more just recording yourself becomes part of the tennis culture, then, people will naturally start to do that. And then, as you said, like, even if you're just looking at your highlights, you'll slowly start to pick out like little details like, oh man, my footwork was so bad on that point, or, whatever it is. And then that's just all going to kind of reinforce how you need to improve your game. And then you'll start to get a little bit more tactical and strategic about it. And I think that's sort of the journey everybody I think goes on with Swing Vision. It's like the more you record, the more you review yourself, you start to actually realize like, oh wow, like I can actually improve that, or my toss is really bad here, or whatever it is. Like you can just see all these little things, and it's before you know, it's like the fastest way to improve is just to watch yourself play. Like within 2 minutes, you know what you need to do.
And like the great part about it, technology advancements brings you back to showing you the simplest things that you do wrong that create a problem. Whether, like you said, whether you're short a step, you didn't extend far enough on your ball toss. It's the simple things that the pros do better than everybody else,
Right.
which allowed them to continue to be experimental and go to a whole nother place. Everybody wants a pill. Oh, if I swing harder, if I do this, no. Look at the picture. You were falling over. That's not a good sign. We want to be on balance. Forget about everything else. Start there. Start with the ground. So like I said, you guys are a lot younger, and we go through this all the time. And I laugh. I said, okay, when I started, but it was a Super 8, and it was a big selling point. To be able to twice a year we videotape you, and we go into the room and watch, and talk about quality being horrendous and everything else. But you did learn. You watched. First of all, you look forward to it because you wanted to see what you looked like, and then you sit there and go, "Oh God, did I really do that?" I don't realize. So anytime you see it, it's reinforcement, and the more often you see it, and considering the phone is attached to everybody's hand to begin with, it's a no-brainer.
And Bobby, I remember that video time frame because it also cost $60, and that was an intolerable amount of money. Like nobody had that much money to pay for video. It was $60 was so much money back then. I'm like, I don't know if I can afford that.
You had a lesson, and you had to pay somebody to do the video, and like you said, it became a whole different level of lesson. And I mean, and that's 20 years ago. There was a guy out in Atlanta. That's how he made his living. He videotaped. And now, as much as you wanted it as a coach, it is a little cost prohibitive. Now, just here, we'll go through it, and if the coach is smart, it's a skull session. Hey, do a couple minutes of chalkboard, 15 minutes. It's a lesson, and it's quick because that they're going to want to do it more than they're going to want to listen. So, like you said, the coach chops it up. This is what, look at your backhand. All right, this is what we're going to work on today. Boom. It's just going to simplify everybody's life.
Agreed. And Swupnil, you're going to have a different experience in California because California and Georgia, we both speak English, but we're basically different countries. And we're just very different. And Atlanta being very unique with its tennis coach culture as well. But there, I don't know what your experience is going to a coach and say, hey, we've got this great tool. You should spend money on it. It's a value add for your coaching abilities. Here, we always have trouble convincing the coaches to spend money on the extra things because it's just hard. I mean, we've got plenty of coaches here that don't have the club that also pays for it. And you don't get to walk in and say, I've got my coaching job. Here are your new shoes and your collared shirt, and here's your Swing Vision account. Like, we just don't always have that. So I got to come up with my $180 a month or whatever, or sorry, a year. And that's one of my favorite things about it. It's really not that expensive. And then I look back at the intolerable amount of money that it was for 1 hour of video back in the day. This is as much as you want within your phone to be able to get it done. and there are going to be some costs. Maybe you need to upgrade your phone, whatever it is. But in that case, do you have good response from the coaches from a cost point of view, and for them bringing it in and saying, yes, we can integrate this into what we're doing?
Yeah, so I think the biggest hurdle actually has been probably the hardware, because it's like a lot of coaches, typically aren't as like higher income as like the players, right? And so they may not necessarily have like the latest iPhone. They might have an Android device instead because that's a lot more affordable. We're not on Android yet. Hopefully we'll get there next year. But so I think
I
like
know I'm an
that's
Apple share.
always
Hold on, let's stay with Apple. We're Apple share.
Bobby, it's not going
but
to work on your flip phone. It's just not going to work.
but but I think that's honestly been the bigger barrier. It's like, oh, I got to upgrade my device. Like I don't really upgrade my device that much. I mainly use my phone to just make calls. Like, why do I got to get a whole new phone? So I think like for a lot of coaches, it's like a big change. Obviously, if you're like a younger coach just coming out of college and stuff, that's not an issue. You probably already have an iPhone. But I think like, the older coaches, like it's a bit of a friction point for them. But yeah, I think like the cost of the subscription, like you said, it's like, basically $15 a month, and you were saying 20 years ago, there was a guy who was doing it for $60. I remember when we first launched Swing Vision back in 2019, even at that time, there were guys here in California that would go out with GoPros and they'd record matches at like USTA events, $40 a match. And it's
Yeah.
like nothing special. Like it's just the full match. You have to play through all the dead time. And with Swing Vision, it just like literally saves you time. And it's $15 a month for like as many matches as you want effectively. I mean, it's just insane. It's like less than $1 a match if you do the math. So it's just like the cost has come down so much now, and it's like so much more accessible. So I think like, yeah, the cost should really be like a no-brainer for a coach, I would think. But I think, I could see how changing device, changing platforms could be a much bigger decision, maybe an emotional decision for some people. But and I think we'll get there eventually. And then I think the thing that's really exciting, which I was kind of alluding to, is we're going to start building some new features for coaching that are going to help coaches actually like earn more. And the biggest opportunity we see there is remote coaching. So, having the ability to, you know, record a match with SingVision and then have a coach anywhere in the world provide feedback for you remotely. And so I think like that would be an excellent opportunity for coaches to actually be able to get more business, because like you're not just restricted to where you live. You can literally coach anybody in the world. And so I think as these kinds of things get built, then it starts to become, even more of a no-brainer for coaches to actually use the service. And then, if they're using it for remote coaching, they might start to get more familiar with the product. Maybe they'll start using it for in-person lessons as well. Hopefully you would think at that point. So I think like all of that should help. But I think part of it's also just like we've really catered a lot of the product experience to players, and there's a lot of features that we just haven't made yet, which I know that coaches want, but we just haven't been able to prioritize. But I think like now that we're going to be focusing on this like remote coaching functionality and like helping coaches earn more money and all that, then I think we'll be able to slowly add in more features that are helpful to them.
And that helps so much because you're not competing with the coaches. There are plenty of other apps, we'll call them, plenty of other
Right.
solutions out there that are saying, well, we can do your coaching for you. We have your AI coach. And the coach said, well, that's not good for me because I don't want to get replaced by a robot. The
Totally.
coaches don't want to feel threatened by the thing that's helping them.
For sure.
And in this case, I think of it, Bobby mentioned earlier, it was what happens when it rains? Well, you know what? You've got 3 matches we haven't gone through yet. You're still coming to your lesson. Let's go sit down. Let's go through it all. And there's your lesson. So there's your rain out solution is we also can go through the matches we haven't gone through. But then also on a weekend where if I can't be at one of my players' tournaments and you've got that streaming option, I'm there. I mean, I don't want to say I can text him and be like, no, keep serving to the backhand. He's going to check it on the changeovers, but I'll say it because if I'm watching in real time, how nice would that be? I've got all 10 of my kids up here on the screen and I'm watching everybody play on their Swing Vision, feed that's coming in. I think obviously it's got legs because you guys are doing it, but we've just been excited about it for a couple of years. So we're looking forward to what's next, of course.
And I'm going to prove that I probably haven't done as much homework as I should as far as the pricing plan. But that is, so right now you're targeting, it's basically per individual.
Yes.
Is that the way it's priced? Because I mean, and I've said this from day one, I would love to see, to figure out on your side where you maximize your money just a different way. How does the club pay for the majority of it, and then through add-ons? Because and how does it work? If I have it, does my player have to have? They obviously have to have it. How do they communicate with me? that's the other thing that I saw from day one. Okay, how do we simplify
Mhm,
the
mhm.
process?
Right. Yeah. That's something we're just trying to figure out with clubs. I think, especially with this like the permanent model that we're looking into, it seems like a lot of clubs are very interested in that, and most of the clubs we're talking to are interested in just baking it into like the membership of the club, and
Exactly.
all the pros would get access to it. It's already on every court, so I think like that's the simplest solution probably. And then yeah, I mean today if you're like a coach that doesn't coach out of a club necessarily, you're just doing private lessons at wherever park you go to, then I think it's a little bit more complicated. But you can still get a subscription for yourself as a coach, and you could technically just do the same thing. Like we give you 30 hours of recording a month, so you could record all your lessons if you wanted to. It doesn't matter if there's like other players in it. You can even tag them in it. The main restriction that will happen is for the players' end. So like on their side, unless they subscribe, they're gonna kind of be capped to 2 hours a month of their lessons essentially.
Mhm.
Um, but if they want to see more footage than that, then they can just upgrade. But you as a coach could certainly record as much as you want within your limits, and you could show them that from your phone and all that. So like you can still get a lot of the benefits out of it. But yeah, it is still like a little bit weird that there's like different subscriptions and stuff. So I think probably more opportunities to improve that still and make it more simple, as you said.
Yeah, I mean
Um,
that was, I mean, and I know it's always tough. I went through this with courts was coming on, and what their vision of how to
right.
pay. When I was like, no, and I won that argument, thankfully, because I was like, that 50 cents, you don't think it's much,
Right.
but when a club's doing 5,000 reservations a month, that's a lot more than
Yeah.
they're not paying for it. So,
Right.
and I always go to the deepest pockets. There's the other, there's the law background. Go sue the guy who's got the most money. Well, I want to get the club. They're, like you said, most likely to pay it, and they can raise their dues
Right.
$10, $20 a year. Nobody knows any difference. They're not going to sneeze over it if you're going to get something as dynamic as this.
Yeah.
So that has always been, how do we simplify the presentation? So that said, and because we're going to go, we said 2 years ago, I'm ready to go. My people continue to ask me. I said, I'm talking to them today. What do we? What's the? What do they do to sign up, and how do we get this thing going for you?
Yeah, so I mean, the best way to sign up is going to be with your referral code. So I assume you guys will probably share that in the notes somewhere, but I think
Definitely.
that will give them a free swing stick actually. So, there's a pro subscription that we have, which gives you, like I said, 30 hours a month of recording, lifetime cloud storage. So your matches are there forever. Like you can go back 10 years, your matches will still be there if you want to watch them. So that's all included in the subscription. That subscription's $180 a year, effectively $15 a month. And so if you sign up for that, you get the free swing stick if they use your link.
Mhm.
And there's also a 45-day like money back guarantee. So if you're not happy with the product at all, you can just return it back to us, get everything back. We don't want to charge you if you don't get value out of the product. So yeah, so that's pretty much the fastest way to get it. And the app itself, you can download later after you sign up, but it's free to download and works on any iPhone, like iPhone 11 or newer. As long as you're on the latest iOS, you can get it.
Bobby, we got to get this at Windermere for sure. And I was even thinking
Yeah.
about it. I'm like, man, well, how much fun would it be to get this going everywhere? And like we said, we've been talking to Swing Vision. We've been talking to you guys off and on for the last couple of years. Just where does it plug in right? When are we ready for you? And when are you ready for us? And we'll say, okay, how do we get this here in Atlanta that says this is just really good for tennis?
Yeah.
Aside, I mean, even if it was almost too expensive, which it's not. Like even if the cost was the problem, we could complain about that, but we can't. It's too affordable to not be able to plug this in and helping with live calls with the highlights. With like I said, when streaming, we can figure that out because we'd love to make that the highlights beyond just your Instagram page. We want to be able to share it in Atlanta in general. Again, with Alta, USTA, and T2, and all the things going on here, I think it would be phenomenal. I think people would really enjoy it. I think it would bring people into the sport and really help tennis in general. And that's what Go Tennis. That's what we're doing here in the podcast.
Yeah.
That's why we like talking to guys like you, Swupnil, because we see that it's about using our own skills. Mine isn't statistics, but yours is. So using your own skills to be able to help tennis in general, or as Bobby and I like to say, make tennis better than it already is.
Yeah, definitely. Well,
So
yeah, we
I've
should definitely
got
chat more about that. I mean, yeah, definitely would love to just have everybody using it and at the Atlanta community. I mean, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, we'll definitely figure that out. And you're right. We'll stick the link in the show notes and let everybody know about the referral code. And I can vouch for that swing stick. That I wasn't sure. I'm like, it's $100 stick. Come on, guys. I can put a cell phone on a broomstick. What are you guys doing? And when I opened it, I actually had our 18-month-old son open it, and we video, and we're gonna put that out at some point. I got it out. I'm like, this thing is awesome. Like, this is fantastic. I'm like, yes. So getting that free, that's an offer. I appreciate that. So Bobby, I'll start my ending with you and say, you got anything else for Swupnil, or should I hit him with King of Tennis?
Hit him.
Okay, Swupnil, before I hit you with King of Tennis, anything else we forgot to mention?
No, I think that was covered a lot there. Was great.
Okay. So, as you know is coming, and I assume you put a little bit of thought into it, but we always ask this King of Tennis question, where whether it's for the whole universe or just Southern California, just Northern Cal, anywhere in the world, any length of time, if you were king of tennis, whether it's professional, amateur, anything, if you were king of tennis, from your point of view, is there anything you would do or change?
Well, I mean, I'll give two answers onto that, I guess. The first one is kind of the obvious one, which is I would want every match to be recorded and streamed with Swing Vision. Like I would just want that to happen right away,
Sounds
especially
oddly
at the competition
self-serving.
level. Yeah, but I just think like it's just so fun to have the line calling, and I just think like I wish everyone could have this. So that would be like the one thing I would change. I think the second one is probably more from as a fan and kind of has to do more with pro tennis. I feel like it's very fragmented in terms of like where do you watch which tournament and all that. Like I wish it was all just like one streaming service that just had every single match, everywhere, and like I could just see that. And it was also more customized, like instead of always seeing the same angle, like maybe I want to see it from the court level angle, or I want to always see like Carlos, regardless of which side he's on, I want to see just the angle from that side, like a more customized viewing experience, but also more consolidated viewing experience. Because right now you kind of have to go to different streams, or like I think Medvedev suggested one time you have to go find an illegal stream online. So it's just like such a mess right now, I feel like, and I think that would be so much better for the fans if it was all consolidated. And you had like college tennis in the same product too. I don't know, like I just think it'd be super cool to have this like one place to like see everything that related to the sport. So I don't know how practical that is, but I just feel like from a fan perspective, that would be amazing.
The practicality isn't relevant when you're king.
It's true.
You can do whatever you want. And I'm trying to figure out how to push back, Bobby, because it's not like the question isn't how do you do it, because it's just more cameras and figuring out the feeds. I remember back in the day when ESPN started doing their ESPN3 and all the extra feeds, and it was all free because it didn't really work. But that's why they did it. But I loved it. I was like, oh, I got this weird angle. I can watch court 17, and I don't have to watch this, other match that I don't want to watch. And I can watch the guy that I like or the girl that I want to watch, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good target, Swupnil, a fun thing to say, hey, you know what? Let's personalize the viewing experience. Now, does everything then have to go through Tennis Channel, tennis.com, ATP? Like, how does that work? We end up with some sort of torrent system that we've got to we've got to pay. You know what? I think between the three of us, we should be able to figure this one out.
Well, considering the conversations of the week, if the Saudis get involved, it might be a lot closer to being reality than you think. If you all of a sudden have a league, then you have a commissioner and you say, this is the way we're going to, I got to think that obviously the technology of customizing your viewing experience already exists. That's just a matter of making it consumer, presenting to the consumer. But I got to think that's there already. So that's not that big a deal. I think that's an awesome idea. How much fun, you get to watch, just spend more time concentrating on who your favorite player is. Yeah. So that's an absolute no brainer. And again, if you get it all into one house, I think everything else gets a lot easier, where you're not worrying about does NBC have the same technology or making the same commitment as ESPN. It's Tennis Channel won't be the place. And again, most of it is, let's be honest, it's business and the antiquated way in which it's approached with rights fees and small picture. And the cable thinks tennis thinks they're the same as golf, so they should get $3.25 a household instead of 10 cents. There's so much that goes behind it. It's terrible, because I'm a big believer, give it to the people, they'll pay extra. Yeah, I think that's been proven with Apple. Everybody talks, they have no new technology, yet services goes up 20% a quarter. Well, they're doing something, guys, to keep their business and to expand their bottom line. You know, and I think it may be a little more work. You got to be a little more creative that way, but it's here, and it's unfortunate that we're stuck with these models, especially with all these television companies, Disney being one of them, just trying to figure out what to do with these rights agreements that are seemingly bankrupting them. So
Yeah.
I like it.
Figured it out. The Go Tennis stream is going to happen. We're bringing it to you coming in 2029 or so.
But
We figured it out.
I love that. I love
Exactly.
that.
You heard it here first.
I heard it here first. That's what's coming. Swupnil, I appreciate your time. I really do. This has been a lot of fun. Bobby, as always, thank you so much. And
Does this mean we're not going to talk
about
about autonomous driving?
Was that?
Does this mean we're not going to talk about autonomous driving?
No, that's the other podcast.
Oh, okay.
This is the Shaun and Bobby podcast. That's the Bobby and Shaun pod. Different thing.
Different thing. Gotcha. All right.
Different thing. Yeah, we'll follow up next time. But Swupnil, I appreciate it. We'll see what we can do. It sounds like you got some cool things happening, and we'll see how we can bring you into the Atlanta market and see what happens here, because we got a few tennis players. We'll see if we can make that work.
Sure. That sounds good. Thank you so much for having me. This is super fun.